It's like we told the cow, hey, you know that stuff you just made to feed your baby with? We're going to shake it up, churn it, and then we're going to melt it over your seared remains. And it's going to be delicious. Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm going to cook a big steak in a pizza oven today. So if you've ever been to a steakhouse like like a Peter Luger's or a Keen's or a place like that, at steakhouses, the way they get that real, deeply charred crust is that they have extremely hot either grills or broilers. So at Peter Luger's, for example, they have a broiler that gets up to 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. A home oven typically maxes out at about 550 degrees Fahrenheit. So the only way you're going to get sort of close to that style of steak, which is not necessarily the best style of steak, but that style of steak is to use an outdoor oven. These guys can get up to about 1,000 degrees. So we're going to get a sort of similar kind of sear to it. So cast iron pan, I've had it preheating there just for a few minutes. It's not going to be sort of ripping hot yet, but that's okay because most of the heating that happens to the steak is going to come from the hot air above. So this is a steak, it's a ribeye, about 2 inches thick, which is sort of the minimum I go for when I'm doing a big steak like this. Yesterday we seasoned it with salt, so plenty of salt, and then we let it sit on a rack uncovered in the fridge overnight. So you can see it gets a sort of nice dry surface. That's also going to help us really get a really nice sear on it once it goes into the oven. All right, so dry pan, steak is going to go in there. We're just going to pop that right in there. Oh, and in the meantime, actually, I'm going to stick a probe into it. We're going to be measuring, trying to get sort of the deepest part of the steak here. What we're aiming for is for the center of it. I want it to be medium rare, on the medium side of medium rare. So I'm going to wait for the very center of it to come to about 115 degrees or so. Then we'll take it out, and the carryover cooking should take it up to around maybe 127, 130. That's what we're looking for. In the meantime, I'm going to start making a compound butter to serve with the steak. So I've got here butter, shallot, lemon, parsley, and salt. So this is a real classic butter, beurre maître d'hôtel. So maitre d' butter. It's a French butter, parsley, lemon, real simple. It goes great on steak. It goes great on vegetables. We're going to grill some asparagus in here with it as well. You could do just, the classic one actually I think is just parsley, lemon, salt, and butter. I'm adding this shallot to it as well just because I like the flavor. So one really finely minced shallot. Oof, you can hear that steak going. Handful of parsley here. Bundle it up and then slice with the knife right against your knuckles, guiding it. And then I go crosswise, back and forth a few times. Into a bowl here. We're going to microplane some lemon zest into there. When you're microplaning, you don't really want to go much beyond there. So once it starts to get past the pale yellow into the white, that's when your flavor is going to start to get bitter. So we're looking just for the bright yellow parts of the lemon. And then just about a teaspoon or so juice. Some of the fancy sea salt, because I want those little crystals in there to intersperse the butter so that as it kind of melts over the steak, you get those little crystals of salt that pop. Room temperature butter and some pepper. We're just going to kind of mush this all up together. This butter, by the way, you can make it in advance. What you can do is make it in advance, wrap it up in a kind of log shape in plastic wrap or in parchment, and then you can throw it in the freezer. And it'll last a good long time. It's good for both for finishing. We're going to put this right on top of our steak at the end so that it melts over the top. But it's also good for cooking with. So you can, if you have some of this butter, you can say make pasta, and at the very end throw a few knobs of this butter in there for a little bit of emulsion, a little bit of extra richness, and some of that lemon and parsley flavor. You can, steam your vegetables, steam some asparagus, or steam some broccoli. Put it in a bowl, add some of this butter, toss it in there till the butter melts and coats it. It's delicious. Lots of uses for this kind of butter. That was unsalted butter, by the way, although you can use salted butter. You just have to watch out how much additional salt you add. But I like most of my salt to be in those large crystal forms for this type of butter, so I use unsalted butter so I can max out the amount of crystalline butter in there.
Salt maxing.
Salt maxing. This salt butter is skibbity. Am I skibbity? Am I a zaddy?
Whatever you want.
So it's like the aloha of Gen Z. let's see what our steak is doing here. Ooh, look at that. So you see how nice that crust is getting? And all that rendered fat is just from the steak itself. Ribeye is nice and fatty. Let's flip it over and make sure we get some even cooking here. All right, we're gonna let that keep going. Our internal temperature is at 90 right now. So we got a little bit more time left on that steak. The other thing I'm gonna do here is some asparagus. So this asparagus, you know, people have taught you, maybe you've heard this, that when you take asparagus, you should bend the bottom like that, and wherever it naturally breaks is where is where it turns from woody to tender. The problem with that is that really you can make it break wherever you want. Like I can make it break there, I can make it break up here, depending on how I snap it. So, and any method that's sort of dependent on you having the right skill to snap it at the exactly the right place, I don't think is particularly dependable. So I prefer to just use a knife, you know, like I just eyeball it and see where it looks like it's starting to get woody, like right around there. I line them all up and then I just use a knife. I find it a lot faster, just as reliable as the other method. We're gonna season this with some salt, some olive oil. Just gonna give it a little bit of a toss here. So our steak's gonna cook for probably another 5 minutes or so, and then we're gonna finish with our asparagus. So I'll come back here in about 5 minutes. All right, so we are at 117 degrees actually. So let's pop this guy out. Look at how nice and brown and crusty that is. Okay, now we're gonna just let this rest for a few minutes. I'm gonna pour some of this fat. In the meantime, I'm going to get that asparagus into the same pan, and that's going to go straight into the oven while the steak rests. And so when you're cooking the steak, what happens is that there's a temperature differential that builds up on it. So the outer layers of it, obviously where the heat is coming in are going to be at a much higher temperature than the very center of it. So even though the center of the steak was at 115 degrees, the outer layers were a lot hotter. And so what happens is that when you're resting the steak, you're allowing the temperature to normalize between all the edges from edge to center of the meat, and that way the juices are all sort of the same viscosity. They're all distributed evenly within the steak, so that when you cut it open, you don't have as much of that juice leaking out. Some people don't believe in resting their steak. That's fine. I know. Adam Perry Lang, for instance, doesn't rest his steak. I'm pretty sure that Chris Young doesn't rest his steak these days anymore. It's really up to you if you want to or not. Some people like having that real contrast between the extremely hot outside and the cooler inside. I prefer having it a little bit more even all the way through. The thing is that when you are resting your steak, the hotter you cooked it, the longer you're going to have to rest it, because the bigger the temperature differential inside is. So if you cook it at a slightly lower temperature, say if you cook it sous vide, for example, where you cook it using a reverse sear, there's almost no temperature differential on the inside, so there's not really any reason to rest. But we're cooking it at 1,000 degrees, and so there's going to be a big temperature differential in there, and so we do want to let it rest. All right, let's see how that asparagus is doing. Nice. We're looking for it to get bright green and charred. So one of the nice things about doing green vegetables at this really high heat like this, especially asparagus, is that you can get nice charring, so you get that nutty flavor, you get that sweetness, that enhanced sweetness, while the vegetable still remains green. So it takes a very short amount of time to get that browning, so the vegetable doesn't have time to overcook. And so you end up with a vegetable that's sort of still crunchy and green in the center, but has nice charred edges. I'm just going to put some of this and then parsley butter on there. All right, and our asparagus. Let's get some. Because there's a difference between need and want. And I want some lemon parsley butter in there. All right, let's see how we did here, huh? Whew. All right. I would say let me. Also have to remember that the inside of your steak's not seasoned, so I like to add a little bit of salt to the middle. Nothing like a nice piece of cow that's been drenched in the It's like we told the cow, hey, you know that stuff you just made to feed your baby with? We're going to shake it up, churn it, and then we're going to melt it over your seared remains. And it's going to be delicious. When you cook at high heat like that, you get much more sort of rendering of the fat in there. And with something like a ribeye, which has a ton of fat, I don't know. Yeah, I like to let it go to a little past medium rare, so the medium side of medium rare. This might be slightly more than I would normally do, but even at this temperature, I think this probably rose up to about 135 degrees while we were futzing around taking pictures. So it's slightly more than I initially intended to, but even at this temperature, ribeyes work really well because of the amount of fat in them. Some people actually swear by ribeye at 137 degrees. More asparagus. So the flavors in this butter, it's almost like you've got a like a broken hollandaise, you know? It's got the lemoniness and the brightness of the lemon and all that butteriness and the salt. All right. So, ribeye in the pizza oven. We got we preheated a cast iron pan a little bit, seasoned the steak the day before, let it sit rested, uncovered in the fridge overnight so that it builds up a sort of little bit of a pellicle on the outside. And then we put it in the pan, put it in the pizza oven, flip it over a couple times, take it out at 115. We probably could have taken it out a little bit earlier if you like it a little bit more rare, but this is looking pretty good now. Took it out at 115, let it rest. Meanwhile, we took the asparagus, put it back in that same pan, let it broil in the pizza oven again, and then we finished it all off with some lemon, shallot, parsley butter, and it is delicious. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, see you later. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. You can find the full article and recipe along with bonus content and my newsletter for free on my Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos like this, or my alternate channel, Kenji Lopez Main, for my dining content. And follow me on Instagram at Kenji Lopez-Alt for daily updates. You can also get signed and personalized copies of any of my books. That's The Food Lab, The Walk, or my children's book, Every Night is Pizza Night, shipped from Book Larder here in Seattle. Find the links to all of this, as well as all of the tools I used in today's video, in the description below. Thanks.